I'm going to do a quick video on this Cavalier 27 that I got in a few days ago. This is a real uncommon machine for me to work on, and I started working on it a few days ago, and the reason why is I had bought this machine about 9 months ago and I was missing a bunch of parts. I was able to get this machine in the shop, and it had some parts that we could move from the machine to the left here to the machine to the right. So real quickly, this is a Cavalier 27. It holds 27 bottles and it pre-cools 9 bottles. It weighs about 215 pounds, and they were found in areas that like office settings and just smaller areas, because again, it didn't vend very much product. If you were a place that needed more product, you probably were going to get an 81 or a 56 or a 110, and that would give you optimal sales. So this was probably like in a pharmacy or some type of office setting where they didn't need to have a lot of product on location, or they had other machines that had more product or a variety of product, because this is only going to vend one style of or one flavor of product, because you can't see what you're vending, so you know right away that it's a single serve machine or single flavor machine, because again, you don't have a glass door to pick a selection from. So inside the machine you have what's called the Baffle Drum. The Baffle Drum basically is what makes the magic happen. It's the most common part that's missing from the machine. It's probably the most solicited part. If you go on any forum or any website or any social networking group, you'll notice people pick up these machines, but they're always missing the Baffle Drum. Below the Baffle Drum is this spiderweb framing. We're going to go to the other machine to look at that real quick. So if you look at the inside of the machine, you have this spiderweb framing that supports the weight of the drum. That framing is bolted to the bottom of the liner of the machine, and then when you remove the access panel from the inside, which is just this little panel, I'm going to show you real quick, because that way if your machine has it on there, you can identify how to remove it. So you'll notice that when that access panel's put on there, it's 6 screws that keeps things contained and covered from getting any dirt in there. So when you remove that panel, you'll notice that you have the coin mechanism components from the inside. These components become very critical when you have to time the drum, and so we're going to go through that real quickly. So again, Cavalier 27, we have the Baffle Drum, and then we have the spiderweb framework that supports it. Below that we have the evaporator motor and the fan, and we have some other cooling components down there that when the compressor's turned on, it blows cold air and circulates cold air in the compartment. So we have the drum in there. The drum is held in by a cotter pin. I'm using a 3/32 by 1 inch cotter pin, and there's a bearing that's pressed into the drum that fits flush. And then when we need to set this drum inside, the manual says that we have to actually turn this bottom spur gear all the way until it stops. This one's going to keep moving because we don't have the coin mechanism in the front, but basically if you're setting one that has a coin mech, just turn this wheel counterclockwise until it stops. Once it stops, you're going to then insert your drum onto the post of the spiderweb framing network. And then what I had to do is I had to draw a line on my drum to get it timed just perfectly. But how I timed it was, if when I had the wheel spin, if it went past the delivery port, I would just mark it and then I'd move it back just a couple inches until I could get that to land just perfect on the center of the delivery chute. So it's really not that complicated. It kind of sounded hard at first, but if you just start by spinning the gear in the inside until it stops, and you put the drum in there. I started with the supports of the drum basically over the spider web, and that was pretty close. So all I did was move the drum over a little bit to the right until, again, this component here, once it turns, it made it so it was centered with this piece here, and then it worked just fine. Then I put my cotter pin back in. So when we look at the coin or the machine from the front, we have the most important component, which is the coin mechanism. So when you drop a coin down the coin chute, it goes through the top part, which is called the rejector. What the rejector does is either accepts or rejects the coin that needs to drop into the, or lodge into the cam of the mechanism. When we take the rejector out, which is the top piece here, it simply just comes out. We'll put that to the side and we're going to actually show how it vends. So the first thing we're going to talk about is exactly what I just said. So once the coin goes through the rejector, it goes and it lodges the coins inside this cam. This machine is set up to either vend 10 cents, 5 cents, or 15 cents. Just like a Vendo small door mechanism is what I've been told by the guy that does my coin mechanisms. I don't specialize in coin mechanisms, but I can kind of, from time to time, get my way around them a little bit. But you can see that inside that mechanism, when the rejector is removed, you have that cam down there, and those coins lodge into that cam. So when we're talking about how this vends, once the coins lodge into the cam, you're going to shut the door. When you shut the door, the star wheel from the inside makes contact with this piece right here on the front of the coin mechanism. I'm just going to call it the vending gear. So once this door is shut, it makes contact with that in the inside. So when we shut the door, the arrow indicates that we're going to turn it counterclockwise. So I've got the door all the way closed. We've got money in the machine. We've timed the drum to meet the requirements. So when we turn the drum counterclockwise, the ship wheel, or in this case just a standard wheel. We don't have a ship wheel on here, but they call it the ship wheel because the front, the original assembly had a ship wheel, but they're very difficult to find. So this is actually just a reproduction star handle that we were able to pick up from an eBay transaction. It's not exactly what we wanted for the job, but right now it's going to make it work. So once we have the door shut, when you look at the bottom of the drum, you have this, they call it a finger in the manual. That finger, you can barely see it, that helps divert the bottle and allows the bottle to fall off the shelf of the drum. If you look carefully, inside that drum you have a little shelf. If that finger-like component is missing, the machine will not work. You have to have that finger-like delivery chute component in there. It's mounted from the outside. So if you look at when I open up this flap here, and I was missing it on both machines. Thankfully, my man Joey had it, so I was able to get that mounted in the machine and get it to divert the bottle off the shelf and get the product out. So basically when we shut the door, that component down there again is going to divert the bottle off the shelf. So what we do is we're going to turn, and that's going to make the bottle fall off the shelf. You notice how the bottle is now down, and then from there we have the bottle that's coming out right here. So this is just a Canada Dry bottle, but it's basically the same height as the original bottles. So again, so how that works is we put the money through the rejector, which is not in there right now, so we're gonna put the rejector back in, and it has a couple little notches there. That's going to go back in place, and so we have the rejector back in place. So the money passes through the rejector, it's accepted or rejected, it drops and lodges itself into the coin gear cam. When we shut the main door and we turn the wheel counterclockwise from the other machine, how that works is when you turn that ship wheel, that wheel, it turns those bevel gears on the top. You have two gears, so when you're turning that counterclockwise, you see those two spur gears, they are moving. They make contact with each other. At the bottom you have the gear, which is attached to a vertical shaft, and so when you are turning that wheel, at the bottom of that baffle drum there's a gear setting on the baffle drum, so it's making connection with this bottom spur gear down here. hard to see, I don't have a flashlight, but you'll see that you have this spur gear right here. When you turn that counterclockwise, it's going to rotate that baffle drum. That baffle drum, again, this is the baffle drum, has to be timed properly. It has to end at the delivery chute. If it ends in between, then the bottle, when it falls off the shelf, it's going to be in between. It's not going to allow it to drop down the delivery chute. So that is the video on the 27. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have any questions, you can comment down below. And I think the only thing I didn't cover was how the compressor comes out. The compressor comes out with 4 screws, so they come out from the bottom. And so you have to remove the screws from the front. One of ours is missing from the front on the parts machine. And then you have 2 in the back. Once you remove those 4 screws, you lift the machine up, and the compressor comes out the bottom. So basically, I believe in addition to that, you're probably going to have to remove the spider web framing from the drum, because below that's where the compressor comes out. So we have this, we have some pieces down here that will have to come off, and then we'll have to remove the drum support, and then that will be free. This has to come off, and then you can lift the compressor up and out of the machine, or from the bottom out. It also has an empty light, and how that works is, you see that's on the front of the machine, and basically what that is it's a switch that operates a magnet in the slug rejector. So when the not really sure how to explain that, but basically there's an electric magnet inside the machine that has power to it, and when it runs out of product, there's a switch inside, which is right here. You can see the wire right here, and you have this little component here. So once the last bottle passes this, it must open a circuit and then send a signal up to the empty light, so it knows that it's out of product. So basically just realize that when your last bottle passes this sold out flag right here, which is basically your sold out flag, then it's going to turn that switch on. So when you walk up, you wouldn't be able to see if there's product in there, so you need the light on, so you wouldn't just put money in and then not get anything in return. So it has to have some type of sold out indicator on the front of the machine. So yeah, that's everything. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, comment below, or send me an email.